Hello, and thank you for joining me today. We are going to be starting a brand new series called CurEUs or Cure Us. It doesn't matter how you pronounce that. We are going to be examining the scientific evidence for creation, intelligent design, the flood, and many other biblical aspects in the series. Now, I am not a scientist, nor do I purport to be one, nor do I play one on TV. So, we are going to use actual scientists in their actual field of study to learn from. The first video that we're going to be reviewing is from Answers in Genesis. It features Nathaniel T. Jeanson. He is the author of Replacing Darwin, The New Origin of Species, and Traced, Human DNA's Big Surprise. He has a PhD in cell and developmental biology from Harvard, and he is a genetic researcher for Answers in Genesis. Before we get into the video, I'd like to give you some information to compare it with. I have asked Comet by Perplexity approximately what percentage of the Western world believes in evolution over creation. And it says, across the Western world, the majority of people accept some form of evolution, though views vary between countries and the role of the divine influence remains a dividing line. In the United States, according to a 2024 to 2025 Gallup poll, about 58% of Americans believe that humans evolved over time, though most think that God had some role in that process. About 24% accept evolution as entirely natural, no divine involvement needed, while 37% adhere to strict creationism, the belief that humans were created in their present form within the last 10,000 years. Pew Research similarly found that roughly about 80% of Americans now accept human evolution, marking a steady rise over the past decade. In Western Europe, belief in evolution is substantially higher across Western Europe. Surveys indicate 80 to 90% of adults in countries like the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Scandinavia accept evolution as the explanation for humanity's origins. France, Denmark, and Sweden show some of the strongest acceptance rates, exceeding 80%. For Australia and Canada, surveys show that around 80% of Australians accept evolution either wholly scientific or theistic, guided by God. Canada shows similar levels of acceptance, typically between 70 to 80%, depending on religion and religious affiliation. As for the overall estimate, when averaged across the Western world, including the US, Canada, Western Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, roughly 75 to 85% of people believe in evolution, while 15 to 25% favor creationist views. However, the proportion that supports strictly naturalistic evolution, no divine role, remains closer to 30 to 40% overall. Now, keep that percentage in mind. No divine involvement. 30 to 40% of the Western world believes that there was no divine intervention in the creation of humankind. In the video, he is going to go through the Pew Research for scientists' beliefs and how we came to have such an overwhelming consensus on evolution.
One question has nagged the creation-evolution debate for decades. One question has the potential to radically transform 40 years of conflict over Genesis and evolution. The answer to this one question is nothing short of revolutionary. This video is short, but it packs a powerful punch and gains back miles of ground in the creation-evolution war. The Pew Forum survey shows that 98% of all scientists and 99% of PhDs hold to evolution.
98% of scientists and 99% of working PhDs. That's where the scientific consensus comes from. Because if all they believe is evolution, then that's all they research and all that they teach.
They reject the idea that God created the universe, life, Adam and Eve, in 6 ordinary days about 6,000 years ago. Why? When journalists ask me this question, they hope I pick one of 2 bad options. They hope that I either reject science itself.
That is one thing that Christians and creationist believing people are accused of all the time, is rejecting science. We don't reject science. We just reject the scientific consensus that says it was evolution.
Or invoke some sort of vast, nefarious, hidden conspiracy to suppress the truth. They don't care about Romans 1, they just want creationists to look silly. In the summer of 2024, I was preparing a lecture for a group of Brazilian Christian educators. I don't remember what prompted me, but I decided to run some numbers on university enrollment. Specifically, I wanted to know enrollment in creation-friendly universities versus enrollment in evolution-only universities. For creation-friendly universities, Answers in Genesis has published a list.
If you are interested in learning more about creation science, I encourage you to visit the Answers in Genesis YouTube page or their website. These links will be below in the description.
Then I searched the National Center for Education Statistics for numbers for each of these schools. Then I used the same database to get total nationwide enrollment figures. The result? The total number of undergraduates who are exposed to something other than evolution is only around 1%. 99% of college undergraduates are taught only evolution.
Only evolution. Most people graduating from colleges today, 99%, are taught only evolution. Likewise, if you're raised in the public education system, that's all you hear about as well, is evolution. No wonder the scientific consensus is in that direction.
99% of PhDs hold to evolution. In other words, 99% of PhDs are evolutionists because this is all they're ever taught. They can't be evolutionists simply because they were raised that way. They're too smart for that.
So, does what we learn as children have an effect on what we believe in later in life? I asked Comet, and our conversation boiled down to these 2 things. Belief perseverance is a mental tendency that makes people stick to their beliefs even after being shown solid evidence that those beliefs are wrong. It happens because our minds prefer consistency. We'd rather keep our existing view of the world than admit we might have been mistaken. For example, someone might continue believing an old health myth despite new medical research disproving it, simply because changing their stance feels uncomfortable or threatens their sense of identity. The backfire effect is a more extreme version of this. It occurs when presenting evidence against someone's belief actually makes them hold on to that belief even more strongly. For instance, if a person insists a false rumor is true, showing them proof that it's false may actually make them double down and defend it harder. This happens because being contradicted can feel like a personal attack, causing people to react defensively and strengthen their original views instead of reconsidering them. However, researchers have found that true backfire effects are quite rare and actually happen only in emotionally charged or identity linked topics like politics and religion.
Want to guess who else agrees with me? It's the last group that you'd ever suspect. In January of 1982, District Judge Overton ruled on McLean versus Arkansas Board of Education. At stake was a 1981 act entitled the Balanced Treatment for Creation Science and Evolution Science Act.
This was the beginning of the end of the education of creation in the public school system.
In 1987, the United States Supreme Court ruled on a Louisiana law in Edwards versus Aguiar. The Supreme Court overturned the law. Evolutionists did not fight to put evolution back into public schools. Instead, evolutionists fought tooth and nail to keep creation science out. Surely students would have seen the evidence for evolution, observed its scientific superiority to every other origin's position, and walked away convinced that evolution was true and that creation science was false. Why work so hard to keep creation science out? I see no other explanation for the evolutionists' behavior.
That's what I would call textbook indoctrination. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned something. Please join me next time. We're going to go over more creation versus evolution. Have a blessed day.